This guy is amazing. He used a jade pendant to travel back in time to ancient times, and even stole a woman from the emperor. This story starts with a man named Bu Yan. Bu Yan is a writer who has the best-selling book in history. That day, he held a book launch for his new book at Hunan Mang Scenic Area. His book, Nansheng Dishi, tells the legendary story of Empress Lu Yuan of the Nansheng dynasty. According to historical documents, Lu Yuan framed loyal generals and secretly seized power, a truly evil empress who brought harm to the country and people. After the press conference ended, Bu Yan noticed an old lady setting up a stall nearby. She had a broken jade pendant shaped like two fish. This jade pendant looked exactly like the one he saw in his dream the day before. The dream was so strange. Bu Yan traveled back to ancient times, and in front of him was a group of people shouting for the overthrow of the evil empress. On the city wall, there was a stranger with a jade pendant shaped like two fish hanging from her waist. Bu Yan couldn't see her face clearly, but she seemed to see him. Her eyes seemed to see through him. In an instant, the string of the musical instrument snapped. The woman stood up and gently stroked the jade pendant. She shed tears and smiled at the same time. Amidst the angry shouts of the people, she jumped off the city wall. The jade pendant at her waist also shattered. Right now, at Hunan Mang Scenic Area, Bu Yan bought the broken jade pendant from the old lady. He felt weird. Everything in the world has a cause and effect. So how could he dream about this jade pendant before he saw it? While confused, Bu Yan unexpectedly got a nosebleed, and coincidentally, the blood dropped onto the jade pendant. To his surprise, it started raining right after, and then his room disappeared. In front of him was a magnificent palace. Bu Yan realized it was the Nansheng Dynasty palace from his book. But he didn't have time to think, because the Tiger Guard army had found him. He quickly hid in the imperial study. There were a lot of books there. Bu Yan wanted to find a book named Qi Chu Zhu. If he could get this book, he could continue writing the second part of Nansheng Dishi. The book was on a shelf nearby, but before he could grab it, someone took it first. It was a woman, dressed like a palace maid. Weirdly, she didn't seem unfamiliar to Bu Yan. She said her name was Yihua and wanted to take him to meet the young lady. The young lady had been waiting for him for a long time. Then Yihua led Bu Yan to a pavilion by the river. Inside, a woman in red was playing the piano. As soon as she turned her head, the first thing she said was, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Bu Yan used a strange look to carefully assess the woman in front of him. Seeing her walk forward, he took out a piece of porcelain and placed it on her neck. Bu Yan had guessed her identity. Yihua led him from the imperial study all the way here without anyone stopping them. Looking at her clothes, they weren't ordinary. Bu Yan was sure she was Empress Lu Yuan. But Lu Yuan's martial arts skills were so high, she easily controlled Bu Yan. Then Lu Yuan said she wanted to make a deal with him. If he did 3 things for her, she would answer 3 of his questions. This was perfect for him because he needed historical materials for his book. He immediately agreed. The only strange thing was that she knew his name, even though they were meeting for the first time. Lu Yuan smiled but didn't say anything. She told Bu Yan the first thing he needed to do was to change into clothes of the Nansheng dynasty. Bu Yan discovered the clothes fit him perfectly, making him feel even stranger. At that moment, a young boy came to see Lu Yuan. Bu Yan watched from the side. He heard the young boy call Lu Yuan "Mother." He guessed the boy was Lu Yuan's adopted son, named Tongsheng, who would later become the Shengwu Emperor and unify the 9 kingdoms. History recorded that Lu Yuan would be overthrown by Tongsheng in the future. This made Bu Yan even more convinced that Lu Yuan was the evil empress, because even her adopted son wouldn't acknowledge her. After Tongsheng left, Bu Yan walked out from behind the screen. Lu Yuan wanted to help Bu Yan adjust his collar, but he nervously stepped back. He didn't notice that Lu Yuan's eyes were filled with sadness. The second thing Lu Yuan asked Bu Yan to do was eat dinner. It was the Shangdai festival of the 3rd month of spring. She had prepared a lot of home-cooked meals for him. Lu Yuan scooped up an egg for Bu Yan. He took a bite and realized it was truly a delicacy. Soon, all the food on the table was gone. Lu Yuan smiled. Her smile didn't contain any evil intentions, unlike the Empress recorded in history. Bu Yan was curious. What kind of person was she really? At this time, Yi Hua came in and announced that there was only 1 hour left. Lu Yuan immediately ordered a citywide curfew for the night. The third thing she asked Bu Yan to do was to go for a walk with her. She even gave him a mask, telling him to wear it if he encountered anyone. Bu Yan criticized Lu Yuan for imposing a citywide curfew for her own selfish desire, without considering the people. Unexpectedly, Lu Yuan looked gloomy and said that if she had another life, she hoped to be an ordinary citizen, witnessing all the smoke and fire of the human world. She never wanted to be the Empress again. Bu Yan asked Lu Yuan why, and this was his first question. But Lu Yuan's answer was vague. She said she had many regrets, but couldn't defy her destiny. Bu Yan pressed on about what she regretted. Lu Yuan replied that her regret was not being able to spend the Shangdi festival with someone. He asked who that person was, but this time Lu Yuan didn't answer. She only said he would know next time. Bu Yan was a little angry and felt she was just answering for the sake of it. While he was grumbling, Lu Yuan picked a willow branch, dipped it in the water and flicked it towards him. Bu Yan was taken aback and didn't know what to make of it. She said this was a custom during the Shangdi festival in Nanxing. The dew-soaked willow branch was meant to ward off evil and bring good luck. Bu Yan looked at her coldly. He wasn't interested in this. The exchange between the two was over. Since Lu Yuan refused to answer his question, Bu Yan could only seek the answer himself. However, he didn't know that the moment he turned away, tears streamed down Lu Yuan's face. As Bu Yan walked, lost in thought, he saw a signal in the sky. He suddenly remembered that today was the 15th of March, in the 10th year of Yuan-Qi. This was the event of the Yuan-Qi uprising in Nanxing's history. Tonight, Empress Lu Yuan intended to ambush the loyal general, Li Yong. Bu Yan's guess was correct. Lu Yuan was outside the city walls, commanding all the soldiers of the Tiger Banner Army to ambush Li Yong. History recorded that Li Yong was a generation of loyal generals, faithful to his country and compassionate towards the people. Having arrived here, Bu Yan was determined to save this loyal general. Based on his knowledge of history, he guessed that Li Yong would try to escape from the East Gate. But upon arriving at the East Gate, he discovered that Li Yong was colluding with Bai Li. Witnessing the slaughter of Nanxing soldiers, Bu Yan realized that Li Yong was not a loyal general. Just then, an arrow whizzed past Li Yong's head. It was Lu Yuan and her Tiger Banner army. Lu Yuan accused Li Yong of treason, but he argued that he had joined the enemy to protect the country. Nansheng was being pressed by both Bai Li and Xy Ying. Li Yong believed that they should actively seek peace with one side, as only by relying on them could they survive. But Lu Yuan directly exposed his ambition. Li Yong did not act for the country or the king, but for his own desires. Seeing that he couldn't persuade Lu Yuan, Li Yong captured Tong Sheng as a threat. Tong Sheng was not only Lu Yuan's adopted son, but also a descendant of the royal family, destined to inherit the throne. Bu Yan, hiding nearby, was astonished. What was happening before his eyes was completely different from the history he knew. To protect her son, Lu Yuan ordered the entire Tiger Banner army to withdraw. As the tension escalated, Bu Yan, wearing a mask, charged forward. Using his knowledge of history, he advised Li Yong against joining Bai Li. Relying on them would be like feeding the tiger. Once they obtained the letter of surrender and the Nanxing treasure, they would use the excuse of suppressing Nanxing to attack Jiangdu. They would then cross the bridge and break the plank, rendering Li Yong useless. The leader of Bai Li, Qilong, saw that he was at a disadvantage. He swung his sword, cutting off Bu Yan's mask. After seeing the man's face, he said, "You again." Bu Yan was surprised. How could the man from 1,000 years ago know him? Before he could finish, Qilong attacked with his sword. Lu Yan fought him to protect Bu Yan. At that moment, Bu Yan realized that Lu Yan was actually a martial artist. Li Yong's men all charged forward. Lu Yan fought them all alone. She took the chance to cut off Qilong's treasure. At that time, Li Yong aimed his crossbow at Bu Yan. He thought if it wasn't for Bu Yan, he wouldn't be in this situation. Just as the arrow was about to hit Bu Yan, Lu Yan quickly turned and used her body to protect him. Seeing Lu Yan get hurt, the Tiger Banner army rushed forward to avenge the Empress. Li Yong's men hurriedly picked up the treasure and ran away. Lu Yuan fell into Bu Yan's arms injured. Hu Yan was a little scared. He wasn't even sure what happened. Lu Yuan gently held his hand and told him not to be afraid, that they would meet again. Finally, Lu Yuan died in Bu Yan's arms. But unexpectedly, the scene changed and Bu Yan returned to modern times. At first, he thought it was just a dream, but when he opened the book, Nan Shengdi Shi, he found that the ending of the Yuan-Qi rebellion had changed. It was supposed to be Lu Yuan who shot Li Yong, but now it was Li Yong who shot Lu Yuan. Bu Yan believed that it was not a dream, but time travel. His appearance had disrupted the order of time and space, and unintentionally led to the rewritten ending. Lu Yuan died because she saved him. Furthermore, Bu Yan discovered that two broken pieces of jade had joined together. The cracks between the two pieces were also gone. He guessed that this jade pendant was the means of time travel, and he only needed to stick the remaining jade pendant together to complete it. But things didn't go as he expected. The jade pendant was stuck together, but the cracks inside were still there, and he couldn't time travel. To solve the problem, Bu Yan went back to the Hunan Meng scenic area to find the old woman from the previous day, but she was nowhere to be found. At that time, he suddenly remembered the nosebleed he had last night, and he seemed to understand something. He immediately went back and used a needle to prick his finger and applied his blood to the jade pendant. Sure enough, the crack on the jade pendant healed automatically. At that moment, Bu Yan felt like he heard the call of the ancients. He once again traveled back to ancient times. Today was still the third day of the third month. Bu Yan suspected that he might have fallen into a time loop and returned before the Yuan-Qi rebellion. Lu Yuan had not yet ordered the whole city to be put under curfew. Bu Yan was determined to tell Lu Yuan about Li Yong's next move, so she could prepare early. But in a flash, he seemed to see a familiar woman in red. Bu Yan ran into the crowd and shouted Lu Yuan's name. The woman turned around, and it was indeed her. The two of them silently looked at each other in the bustling crowd. Bu Yan wanted to tell her about Li Yong, but Yi Hua rushed over and interrupted him. Strangely, Yi Hua called Bu Yan a lecher. It seemed that she and Lu Yuan didn't know him. Bu Yan was worried, so he followed Lu Yuan to Jinghualu. This was a place where literati and scholars would gather. Just as Bu Yan was looking for someone, a man came to the middle of the stage and danced, his movements crazy and his appearance foolish, making the literati and scholars feel that he was a commoner and chased him off the stage. Bu Yan saw this and heroically helped. Unexpectedly, the foolish man called himself the Emperor. Bu Yan was shocked. Could this man be the Emperor Yuan-Qi? It was strange. The history books recorded that Emperor Yuan-Qi's mind was normal, completely different from the person in front of him. To thank Bu Yan for saving him, the Emperor gave him a badge. With it, he would be able to enter and leave the palace freely in the future. After the Emperor left, a few men in black suddenly appeared and wanted to take Bu Yan away. Bu Yan recognized the knife on the leader, guessing he was a bandit from Xiying. Ji Wangying, just like Bei Li, was a dangerous enemy of Nansheng. The person they actually wanted to kidnap was Emperor Yuan-Qi. But because Bu Yan was wearing the badge, they mistakenly took him for the Emperor. Bu Yan didn't know any martial arts. Luckily, Lu Yuan arrived in time to help. The bandits were unwilling to give up and tried to attack Lu Yuan from behind, but a man stopped them. The man wore a tiger mask. Bu Yan guessed that this man must be the Tiger Banner General in the history of Nansheng, the fearless Lu Shi who made enemies fear him, and he is also Lu Yuan's brother. Lu Shi lived up to his title of Killing God. With 2 moves he defeated the bandits. But when he took off his mask, Bu Yan was surprised again. The history book said that Lu Shi was fierce and cunning. How could he be so handsome? What was even more unusual was that in the 15th year of Yuan-Qi, Lu Shi had already died on the battlefield. This made Bu Yan feel very confused. After some investigation, Bu Yan understood the truth. It turned out that he had traveled back to the 5th year of Yuan-Qi, which was 10 years before the Yuan-Qi rebellion. At this time, Lu Yuan had not yet become the Empress. She was only the Emperor's bodyguard. So he told Lu Yuan what would happen 10 years later. He just wanted to remind Lu Yuan to prepare early. However, the time was not yet ripe. Lu Yuan thought he was talking nonsense. At this time, Bu Yan also discovered that Lu Yuan was going into Li Yong's carriage. 10 years ago, they seemed to have a very close relationship, Relying on the badge given by the emperor, Bu Yan also successfully entered the palace. He found the emperor's chambers, but unexpectedly, the person approving the memorials was not the emperor, but Li Yong. At this moment, the emperor came over. Bu Yan learned from him that Li Yong not only approved the memorials in his place, but also didn't allow him to speak in front of the court officials. Li Yong was approving a memorial when he suddenly became angry. It turned out that a court official accused him of being a tyrant who controlled the government. Lu Yuan reassured him not to worry. It turned out that 5 years ago, the emperor suddenly became foolish, but Nan Shang had internal and external troubles. Lai Yong could only hide the truth from the court officials and handle government affairs himself. At this time, Lu Shi came and reported that he had investigated the rioters at Jinghua Lu tonight. The swords they used were similar to those of Shi Ying, but they were made of cold iron from Bai Li. Bai Li did this to frame Shi Ying for kidnapping the emperor. The two countries had been fighting for more than 3 months. Now was the time to decide the winner. Once the news that the emperor of Nansheng was kidnapped reached Xi Ying, Nansheng would definitely send troops to rescue him. At that time, Bai Lai would be the beneficiary. Lu Shi also learned that Bai Lai was sending troops from Huofeng City to attack Shi Ying. Huofeng City was originally a city of Nansheng, but many years ago, Bai Lai launched a surprise attack on Nansheng and took over Huofeng City. Now, Huofeng City has a weakened military force, making it a good opportunity for Nansheng to regain the city and avenge the past. However, Li Yong stubbornly refused. He said that once a war broke out, it would surely cost the people money and resources. Nansheng currently favors peace, not war. Bu Yan, hiding to the side, secretly laughed. He suspected that Li Yong had already colluded with Bai Lai. Lu Shi, however, insisted on fighting and didn't want to miss this opportunity. Unexpectedly, Lu Yuan sided with Li Yong, believing that he was doing so for the people's benefit. To stop the two from arguing, she offered to play a tune. Bu Yan was furious. The relationship between Lu Yuan and Li Yong 10 years ago, and 10 years later was so different. The next day at court, Lu Shi and the Ministry of War requested permission to go on an expedition to attack Huofeng City. Now that Huofeng City had a weakened military force, it was the perfect opportunity to recapture it. However, most of the court officials were Li Yong's allies, and they all spoke against the war. But at this moment, the deputy commander of the Tiger Banner Army rushed in and reported that the news of the emperor being attacked by Bai Li had spread outside the palace. Li Yong was astonished. How did people know that the attackers were Bai Lai's secret troops, not Shi Ying bandits? He didn't know that it was Lu Yuan, the person he trusted most, who spread the news. According to folklore, Nansheng had a technique called sound transmission, which could secretly convey messages through a distance between sound envoys. Last night, Lu Yuan had sent a few sound envoys. Therefore, Bu Yan was certain that Shi and Yi Hua had a secret code through music. He told Yi Hua to spread the news of the emperor being attacked by Bai Li outside. Based on this, Bu Yan guessed that Lu Yuan was pretending to agree with Li Yong, but in fact, she already suspected that he had colluded with Bai Lai. She even had a complete intelligence network outside the palace. After the secret message in the music was deciphered, it was eventually spread outside the palace, creating a situation that forced Li Yong to act as he did. After the news spread, people rushed to the palace gates to protest, demanding that the court retake Huofeng City. However, Bu Yan reminded Lu Yuan that this battle would be a dangerous one for Lu Shi. According to historical records, the Battle of Huofeng City in the 5th year of Yuan Shi was where Lu Shi died. Lu Yuan suddenly fell silent. She had to choose between family and national interest. Under the pressure of the people, Li Yong had no choice but to ask the emperor for an order, appointing Lu Shi as the commander-in-chief and leading the troops to war. After returning home, Li Yong secretly met with Qi Long. They criticized each other constantly. It turned out that the reason Bai Li pretended to be from Shi Qing to kidnap the emperor was not only to frame Shi Ying, but also to have Li Yong replace the emperor and ascend the throne. At this time, Qi Long threatened that after Nan Sheng attacked Huofeng City, Bai Li would no longer support Li Yong. Unexpectedly, Li Yong had a deeper plan. He discovered that Lu Shi was disobedient, so he decided to trade Huofeng City for Lu Shi's life. By then, the Emperor of Beili would be grateful to him. On this side, Lu Yuan was worried about her brother. At this moment, if she regretted it, maybe she could still stop it. However, Lu Shi was determined to serve the country and the people. He flatly refused his sister. Lu Yuan couldn't persuade her brother, so she decided to follow the army under the guise of returning home to pay her respects to her ancestors. Bu Yan also wanted to go with them. He had changed the outcome with his previous time travel, and he believed that he could do it again. Soon, Lu Shi led the army to leave. Lu Yuan brought Yi Hua with her, and also let Bu Yan join the expedition, under the guise of an imperial censor. On the way, Bu Yan, who wasn't good at riding horses, almost fell. Lu Yuan quickly grabbed him. In that moment, a feeling blossomed silently in Bu Yan's heart. He didn't know that this feeling had been there for a long time. Bu Yan also noticed that Lu Yuan treated him with care and attention, but her words were cold and distant. This contradictory attitude puzzled him. Lu Shi led the Tiger Banner army to set up camp in Hunan. Only one last barrier, the Luli Gorge, separated them from Huofeng City. According to historical records, Lu Shi entered the Luli Gorge, but was ambushed by the enemy and died there. To rewrite history, Bu Yan suggested taking a detour through the water from the east. Unexpectedly, Lu Shi laughed at him as soon as he finished speaking. The two argued fiercely in front of the army. Just then, a soldier came to report that they hadn't found any ambush in Luli Gorge. Lu Shi became even more determined to go through the Luli Gorge. But in reality, the argument was just a ploy by Bu Yan and Lu Shi. As a general on the battlefield, Lu Shi had already guessed that there must be an ambush in Luli Gorge. He did this because there was a spy in the army. The spy would soon report to Beili that there was no ambush in Luli Gorge. This would make Beili believe that Lu Shi was a reckless man, who only wanted to gain glory. Then, he would strike Beili with a devastating blow. That evening, they all roasted meat together. Lu Yuan was still worried about the attack tomorrow, but Bu Yan already had a plan. Luli Gorge had a complex terrain and was covered in thick fog year-round. He guessed that the Beili army would ambush them in the fog. We can use their own tactics against them. Lu Shi will lead the main force of the Tiger Banner army to attack the mountaintop and take control of the high ground. At the same time, there will be a trusted person wearing Lu Shi's tiger mask to lure the enemy. That person would be Bu Yan. Bu Yan explained to Lu Yuan that he hoped that if their plan succeeded tomorrow, she would believe what he said at Jinghualu. He believed that the Yuan-Qi rebellion would happen 10 years later. But Lu Yuan said that he would know tomorrow, and left. Looking at Lu Yuan's back, Bu Yan felt a tinge of sadness. If the plan failed, he would become the deceased Lu Shi recorded in the history books. If that happened, tonight might be his last time seeing Lu Yuan. However, the next morning, Yi Hua couldn't find Lu Yuan. But in the army camp, Bu Yan was holding a letter tightly. It was from Lu Yuan, left for him. It turned out that she knew what Bu Yan said about 10 years later was true. Because Lu Yuan had met the Bu Yan from the future when she was young. Their meeting wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't as simple as Bu Yan going back 10 years. In fact, he and Lu Yuan met in a time loop where past and future intertwined. Bu Yan was traveling backward through time, returning to the past. Every time he traveled, he would meet a younger Lu Yuan. But Lu Yuan, on the other hand, was moving forward in time. Many things had happened between them, but Bu Yan, traveling backward, had no idea. They were like the Manjusaka flower beside the river Styx, destined to miss each other in the reversed flow of time. For many years, Lu Yuan hoped to meet Bu Yan again, but all she got in return was a strange gaze. Countless hopes turned into countless disappointments. Lu Yuan gradually lost hope. From her perspective, since she couldn't change the cause and effect of time, she shouldn't start this relationship. In the Luli Gorge, as expected, the Beili army was ambushed in the valley. The person wearing the tiger mask led his troops into the ravine where they were surrounded. When the enemy thought this was Lu Shi, they were surprised to see Lu Yuan remove her mask. The night before, Lu Yuan had made a decision. To her, Bu Yan was just as important as her brother, Lu Shi. So she used a sleep-inducing incense to make him fall asleep, and then took his tiger mask to Luli Gorge. If one of them had to die, she hoped it would be her. The battle began immediately. with the soldiers from both sides engaging in a fight to the death. The enemy was large and powerful, and Lu Yuan was slowly falling into a passive position. What was worse was that the sky was clear today, and the Luli Gorge had no fog. Lu Shi would not be able to use the fog to attack the mountaintop. At that time, Bu Yan was rushing to the Luli Gorge, but all he saw was a body covered in dirt. He called out Lu Yuan's name, but no one answered. In the end, he only found her tiger mask. Perhaps Lu Yuan had died in battle. Bu Yan regretted coming to this era and telling Lu Yuan everything. He felt like he was the one who had killed her. He blamed himself endlessly. Just then, a hand gently grasped his. Bu Yan looked up, and it was Lu Yuan. They had won the Battle of Luli Gorge. Bu Yan excitedly hugged Lu Yuan. It was then that he realized that what he cared about wasn't winning or losing, but the girl in front of him. And this victory, turning danger into safety, was all thanks to Bu Yan. It turned out that the night before, the soldiers brought charcoal from the Luli Gorge. After weighing it, they found it was very light. This meant that the air in the Luli Gorge was dry, meaning the sky would be clear the next day. Without the thick fog to conceal them, the chance of a successful ambush was less than 30%. If there was no opportunity, one had to create one. Bu Yan used modern methods to create smoke bombs from sugar and nitrate, using them to replace the fog. They would be able to ambush the enemy successfully then. While Lu Yuan was luring the enemy into the ravine, Lu Shi followed Bu Yan's plan. He ordered the soldiers to throw smoke bombs at the enemy on the mountaintop. Within a minute, a thick fog had formed from the smoke bombs. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Lu Shi launched a surprise attack and quickly defeated the enemy, leaving them completely defeated. Finally, they successfully captured Huofeng City. The people were overjoyed to see the Nansheng army enter the city. They had been oppressed by the Beili army and longed for their freedom. Later, while distributing porridge to the people, Lu Yuan accidentally saw Bu Yan's injured hand. She carefully applied medicine to it. Looking at the woman in front of him, Bu Yan's heart trembled even more. He apologized to Lu Yuan. Now he understood that she wasn't the loving empress described in the history books. After these days, he seemed to understand what war was and the pain it brought. Bu Yan then mentioned that he had read the letter she wrote. Lu Yuan said that she didn't intentionally hide it from him, but that her past experiences had made her lose heart and hope. Bu Yan was determined. No matter how difficult the path ahead, he would stay in this era and face it with her. Lu Shi's fate had changed, which proved that he could change the outcome. Therefore, he wanted to help Lu Yuan defeat Li Yong. The history books recorded that in the 5th year of Yuan Qi, Lu Yuan gained the emperor's favor, received the Phoenix badge, and became empress. History wasn't wrong. Lu Yuan took out the Phoenix badge. Emperor Yuan Qi admired her. So 5 years ago he gave her this Phoenix badge. She wanted to use it to become empress and directly confront Li Yong. But she had been waiting for the man she loved for all these years. As she finished speaking, Lu Yuan looked at Bu Yan with a very gentle gaze. Bu Yan felt a pang of sadness. Marriage wasn't a joke. He didn't want the woman he loved to become empress. Lu Yuan smiled softly, wanting to take Bu Yan back to her home. Lu Yuan's home was in Huofeng City, with Hunan Meng to the north. This place was a secluded paradise 1,000 years ago. After passing through the bamboo forest, a 2-story wooden house stood before them. This was Lu Yuan's home. As they reminisced about the past, they unexpectedly discovered an old man hiding in the room, looking frightened. He was holding a baby in his arms. He was a neighbor of the Lu family, Guoba. Guoba told the Lu siblings about the truth behind the assassination of Beiyan. As the story goes, Beiyan was brutally killed by Bei Li because he refused to submit. But actually, Beiyan was secretly killed by Li Yong. And this baby was Beiyan's son. Li Yong wanted to eliminate all traces, but he didn't know that Beiyan had secretly been having an affair with a maid who was also the daughter of Guoba. Before Beiyan died, she was already pregnant. Sadly, she died after giving birth due to complications. Guoba then showed the seal of Beiyan, proving that the baby was a legitimate heir to the throne. The current emperor was foolish and had no heir, making this child the only hope for the future of Nansheng. If they couldn't protect him, Li Yong would likely usurp the throne. Because Guoba was old and weak, Lu Yuan agreed to adopt the child and named him Tong Sheng. Just then, some soldiers arrived and invited Lu Yuan to help settle the refugees. Without a second thought, Lu Yuan left. Bu Yan followed her. Tong Sheng was left in the care of Lu Shi and Yi Hua. The two of them admired each other. They both hoped that the war would end soon, hoping for peace so they could enjoy a happy married life. As they passed through the bamboo forest, Bu Yan wanted Lu Yuan to tell him about their past. But suddenly, Lu Yuan realized something was wrong. If fate had changed, and this time he chose to stay, the time loop would end. Bu Yan would never meet the Lu Yuan of the past again. But why did she still remember her memories with him? This meant that the outcome remained unchanged. Everything was progressing according to the original trajectory. They immediately questioned the soldier, and a few words revealed the truth. He immediately ran away. Lu Yuan realized that this was a ploy to lure the tiger away from its mountain. Lu Shi was in danger. At the same time, Lu Shi heard a noise outside the door and immediately went out to check. Unexpectedly, he was ambushed by assassins and injured. Furthermore, their weapons were coated with poison. The poison quickly spread, and Lu Shi fell into a disadvantage. However, he still managed to hold off the attackers at the door, protecting Yi Hua and the child inside. Seeing this, the assassins hesitated to charge forward. They decided to use crossbows instead. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 arrows flew towards Lu Shi, and he could no longer resist. This scene corresponded to Lu Shi's death, recorded in the history books. Ultimately, Bu Yan couldn't change Lu Shi's fate. Everything that was supposed to happen would continue to happen. When Lu Yuan and Bu Yan returned, it was all too late. The assassins had fled, and Lu Shi was dead. Lu Yuan embraced her brother and cried hoarsely. Yi Hua, heartbroken over the loss of her lover, was distraught. The only fortunate thing was that Tong Sheng was safe. Bu Yan discovered that the arrows used by the assassins were poisoned with the wood of a toxic tree. This type of wood grows only in Nansheng territory. It wasn't used by Bei Li. Moreover, Lu Shi wasn't wearing his tiger mask. How could the assassins recognize him? All these signs made Bu Yan suspect that the mastermind behind this wasn't Bei Li. Two deputy commanders of the Tiger Banner Army told Bu Yan they had discovered a spy in the camp. This person spread the news within the city that Lu Shi had died. As a result, Bei Li's chasing troops were returning. Without Lu Shi, this battle would be difficult for Nanxing to win. One of the deputy commanders thought they should swear to defend the city to the death and wait for Li Yong's reinforcements. The other suggested a temporary retreat. It was Lu Yuan's turn to make a decision. Her approach was neither offensive nor defensive. First, they needed to find the murderer of Lu Shi. The soldiers captured the spy and began to interrogate him. A few questions revealed his identity, a person from Nanxing. And the mastermind behind it all was, as expected, Li Yong. The news of Lu Shi being shot had spread throughout Huofeng City. The Bei Li enemy army happened to be retreating. Coincidentally, Li Yong's border army also arrived at Huofeng City at the same time. There was no such coincidence in the world. Bu Yan guessed that Li Yong came here to take advantage of the opportunity to seize control of the Tiger Banner army. Bu Yan's analysis was spot on. When he learned that Lu Shi was still alive after the Battle of Luli Gorge, Qi Long immediately went to find Li Yong to reprimand him. However, Li Yong was familiar with the Lu siblings, knowing that they would definitely return to their old home to pay their respects to their parents. So he sent people to kill Lu Shi. Just then, a soldier arrived to report that the Bei Li army was approaching Huofeng City. Bu Yan told Lu Yuan to continue the interrogation, while he went outside the city to make arrangements. This battle was even more dangerous than the Battle of Luli Gorge. They wanted to repel the Bei Li army, and they couldn't let Li Yong seize power. At that moment, within Huofeng City, Bei Li spies kept urging the people to flee the city. As a result, the people gathered at the city gate, shouting and demanding to leave. Witnessing this, Lu Yuan didn't hesitate and shot the spy. She assured the people that the court wouldn't abandon them. She would also protect Huofeng City. However, Lu Yuan was just a woman. The people didn't believe her, and insisted on opening the city gate to flee. The soldiers brought this news to Bu Yan, who was making arrangements outside the city. Bu Yan suddenly remembered history from the 5th year of Yuan Qi, when Lu Yuan, a female official, took the Phoenix badge, and became Empress. Realizing the situation was serious, he rushed to the city gate. Unfortunately, he couldn't stop the arrangement of fate. To reassure the people, Lu Yuan decided to take out the Phoenix badge. Once she made this decision, she would definitely confront Li Yong head-on, and she was destined to die one day in the future. She wouldn't be able to be with the man she loved. Lu Yuan actually longed for peace and prosperity, hoping to live a happy life with Bu Yan in their house at Hunanmeng. But in the end, it was all just a mirage. Under the authority of the Empress, the people all knelt down. Bu Yan looked at Lu Yuan before him, his heart breaking. He understood that to her, the pain of losing her brother, the desire for revenge, and her responsibility to the country, all seemed more important than their feelings. But even so, he was determined to stay in this era, by the side of the woman he loved. Bu Yan smiled sadly, then knelt down and said, "Your Majesty, the Empress." At this moment, the Bei Li army attacked. Lu Yuan, in the name of the Empress, gave orders to the army. But when the enemy reached the city gate, they only saw Lu Yuan and Bu Yan guarding outside. They wanted to follow the example of the ancients and stage a play to drive back the enemy. The Bei Li captain showed extreme contempt, but he didn't expect Bu Yan to use his knowledge of history to reveal all of his evil deeds in front of the soldiers, causing him to lose face and become unable to think clearly. Taking advantage of this, Lu Yuan used the sound transmission technique to send a message to the Tiger Banner army. Quickly, the soldiers appeared on the city wall with bows and arrows. Among them was a man wearing the exclusive tiger mask of the killing god, Lu Shi. This caused the enemy to panic. Had Lu Shi not died after all? With a command from the killing god, the sound of thousands of troops approaching echoed around the enemy. They even deliberately shouted that they had come to reinforce Li Yong. This show of force caused the enemy to tremble before even fighting. At this time, Lu Shi on the city wall announced that he would smash the Bei Li army to pieces today. This statement made the enemy panic. Even the Bei Li captain was shaken by this grand display of power. Lu Yuan seized the opportunity to say that Li Yong and Lu Shi were like father and son. How could they bear to kill each other? This was a grand plan orchestrated by the two of them, with the goal not only to recapture Huofeng City, but also to destroy the chasing Wind Army, severing Bei Li's arm. Bu Yan also said that if it weren't for Li Yong, how would he know the captain's private affairs? This time, the Bei Li captain completely believed them, immediately leading his troops to flee in panic. In this battle, Nan Sheng successfully repelled the enemy, without firing a single arrow. After driving back the enemy, Li Yong led his border troops to the city. This time, Lu Yuan, in the name of the Empress, didn't allow him to enter Huofeng City. The Tiger Banner army brothers were even more loyal to her. But Li Yong argued that according to Nansheng laws, without an official decree of appointment, she wouldn't be considered the real Empress. Moreover, Qilong also wanted to return to the military camp to give orders to eliminate the Tiger Banner army. Lu Yuan knew that this was not the time for civil war, so she agreed to return to the palace with Li Yong. She also entrusted the command of the Tiger Banner army and Lu Shi's tiger mask to Yang, the deputy commander. He was the person who pretended to be Lu Shi. After that, Lu Yuan descended from the city wall towards Li Yong, towards her destiny. On the way back to the palace, Lu Yuan was imprisoned in a prison wagon, with Yiwa by her side. The soldiers in front carried Lu Shi's coffin. Unexpectedly, as they reached the city gate, there were eunuchs waiting there, delivering an oral decree. It ordered Li Yong to immediately appear in court, and also demanded the release of the Empress in the prison wagon. Li Yong found it strange. How could the foolish emperor give an oral decree? However, because of his position as a minister, he had to obey. Then Lu Yuan entered the court as the Empress. After 5 years, Emperor Yuan Qi finally lifted the curtain again. He had sharp eyes and a firm expression, unlike a foolish madman. Li Yong was puzzled, but then the emperor suddenly slammed the table and demanded an explanation for his 2 crimes. The first was disrespecting the Empress. Li Yong was about to use the law as his defense, but the emperor immediately said that he hated those troublesome rituals. Moreover, he had personally given the Phoenix badge to Lu Yuan. Did he need Li Yong's permission? The second crime was that he colluded with Bei Li to kill Lu Shi. Li Yong tried to explain himself. Although Lu Yuan brought witnesses, he still tried to argue in every way possible. Just then, Li Yong saw a flaw in the emperor's act. There was someone beside the emperor, seemingly helping him speak. That person was actually Bu Yan. A few hours earlier, to protect Lu Yuan, Bu Yan had sneaked out of Huofeng City and returned to the emperor's chambers. He taught the emperor how to act, telling him to imagine the palace as the stage of Jinghualu. Thus, the two of them cooperated in a performance in court. However, Li Yong was cunning and quickly came up with a countermeasure. He spoke 2 or 3 sentences, exposing the truth about the emperor. At this point, Li Yong no longer concealed anything. He openly told the court officials that the emperor had lost his mind. He even accused Lu Yuan of manipulating the emperor. He claimed that she not only falsely accused him, but also schemed to seize the throne, wanting to rule Nansheng. The court officials believed Li Yong, and they were furious, accusing Lu Yuan of being a tyrannical empress. This situation made Yihua's heart ache even more. Was this the Nansheng that Lu Shi wanted to protect with all his heart? To avenge Lu Shi and Lu Yuan, she grabbed an arrow and walked toward Li Yong. But in the nick of time, Bu Yan snatched the arrow from Yihua's hand and stabbed Li Yong with it. No matter what, he didn't want Lu Yuan to be implicated. Suddenly, the court became chaotic. Seizing the opportunity, Qi Long rushed in, wielding a sword and trying to attack Bu Yan. Bu Yan immediately spat blood and fell into Lu Yuan's arms. He knew that his life in this era was over. The next time he would meet Lu Yuan would be on the night of Shangti, 10 years later. Soon, Bu Yan returned to his world 1,000 years later. He discovered that the jade pendant only had 2 cracks left. Perhaps this meant that he only had 2 more time travels left. Bu Yan thought he had killed Li Yong, but after searching online, he learned that Li Yong had only fallen seriously ill and hadn't died. In the darkness, Bu Yan tore up what he had written, because he knew that all the words in the books were lies. On the night of the Yuanqi rebellion, Lu Yuan didn't order the entire city to be put under curfew for personal reasons. Instead, she did it to stop Li Yong from betraying the country and fleeing. Tongshang wasn't a puppet she was using, but the emperor's only grandson. Yet, the historians reversed black and white. Li Yong, who had betrayed his country, was praised as a virtuous general for all time. Meanwhile, Lu Yuan, who spent her whole life serving the country, was considered a tyrant empress. Bu Yan felt injustice on Lu Yuan's behalf. He swore to clear her name for the woman he loved. Meanwhile, in ancient times, a month had passed since the assassination attempt in the court. Li Yong's wounds had healed. Driven by his own ambition, he proposed to rule Nansheng with Lu Yuan. For the sake of the greater good, Lu Yuan reluctantly agreed. Currently, the 9 countries were in chaos, and Nansheng couldn't afford any more internal turmoil. But she also told him that they were not the same kind of people. Moreover, she had already seen Li Yong's true colors 5 years ago. 5 years ago was the first year of Yuanqi, when Lu Yuan was 21 years old. She was Li Yong's subordinate at that time. She hid in Jinghualu to collect intelligence for him. That day, Lu Yuan received intelligence that the emperor insisted on leading an expedition north and was currently pursuing Li Yong. At this time, the imperial guards also came to search Jinghualu. Lu Yuan noticed bloodstains outside the room, realizing that Li Yong was hiding in her room. So, she intentionally injured her hand to cover up the blood. Just as the imperial guards were about to search her room, she deliberately set up a pinwheel. It had a wooden character on it, which was the emperor's personal name. As soon as the imperial guards saw this, they quickly left. It turned out that when the emperor was still the crown prince, he went to Jinghualu in disguise to listen to music. He saw Lu Yuan and hoped she would enter the palace with him. However, she refused. So, the emperor gave her this pinwheel, saying that it would be her amulet. At first, Lu Yuan didn't care, but she didn't expect it to actually work. Li Yong was heartbroken by his current circumstances. The previous emperor was gone, and he had worked tirelessly for the court. Yet not only had he been dismissed from his post, but he was also being chased like a stray dog. The new emperor, Yuanqi, was young and impetuous. He wanted to follow in his ancestors' footsteps and launch a military campaign against Beili as a show of force. Li Yong, as the prime minister, belonged to the faction favoring peace and didn't want war. At this point, he had not turned evil yet. He was still a good official who cared about the country and the people. He even planned to send Lu Shi to persuade the emperor. Lu Shi and the emperor were similar in age and shared the same ideals. But the problem was that Lu Shi was leading troops to the southwest. The journey was long, and he had no set date of return. Later, Lu Yuan went to fetch medicinal herbs to treat Li Yong's injuries. Li Yong was alone in his room when he heard a knock on the door. Without thinking, he opened it. Unexpectedly, it was a masked man wielding a knife, attempting to assassinate him. Li Yong was injured and could not fight back. Luckily, Lu Yuan rushed to save him and remove the assassin's mask. It was Bu Yan. He had traveled back to Nansheng through the Jade Pendant, returning to the time when Lu Yuan was 21 years old. He assumed that Lu Yuan wouldn't know him yet. Perhaps they hadn't met yet. He couldn't bear for her to be bound by fate. So he wanted to eliminate Li Yong for her. After the mask fell off, Bu Yan and Lu Yuan looked into each other's eyes, filled with longing. Lu Yuan only said one sentence, "You're back." At that moment, Bu Yan was startled. Even the 21-year-old Lu Yuan had met him. Their first meeting was even further back in the past. Suddenly, the sound of the Imperial Guards came from outside the door. Lu Yuan told Li Yong to go first. In the room, only she and Bu Yan remained. Lu Yuan couldn't hold back her tears. She asked Bu Yan why he had only returned now. "Do you know how long I've been waiting for you?" Bu Yan gently embraced Lu Yuan. Unknowingly, he noticed that his mask was the same one that was in Lu Yuan's chambers when she was 36 years old. She had kept it for 15 years. Bu Yan wiped Lu Yuan's tears and then apologized. The time loop was unavoidable. He always caused the woman he loved to wait. Bu Yan remembered that Lu Yuan wanted to spend the Shangde festival with him. Before it was too late, he would help her fulfill that wish. On a spring rainy night, Bu Yan took Lu Yuan on a run through the streets. They ran to a bell tower. Bu Yan gently stroked Lu Yuan's hair, and she blushed and smiled softly. It was still raining. Bu Yan told Lu Yuan to look out at the road. He knew that she had the world in her heart, so she must like to stand on high ground and look down. But Lu Yuan said that she actually preferred to walk on the road, to eat eggs and soup with the person she loved, walk around the night market, and pick a willow branch soaked in dew to ward off evil spirits. Upon hearing this, Bu Yan suddenly realized that on that night, Lu Yuan had asked him to do 3 things, but she only wanted to fulfill her simplest wish. It's just that the 21-year-old Lu Yuan didn't know the story of her 36-year-old self. Bu Yan wanted to do these things with Lu Yuan now. However, Lu Yuan wanted to choose another good day. She believed they had plenty of time. These words made Bu Yan feel sad. If they wanted to have a long time together, he had to eliminate Li Yong and prevent the change of fate 15 years later. Only then would Lu Yuan not die. Lu Yuan asked Bu Yan why he wanted to assassinate Li Yong. In her opinion, he was very intelligent. He sympathized with the people and was a good official. He adopted Lu Shi as his adopted son and brought him to court. He also placed her in Jinghua Lu, all with the goal of collecting evidence of crimes committed by corrupt officials and clearing out the wicked officials in the court. Bu Yan reminded Lu Yuan that Li Yong was doing this to cultivate his own power. Even in his agitation, he revealed that in the future, Li Yong would collude with Bai Li. However, Lu Yuan didn't believe him at all. For all these years, no one had known Li Yong's information better than her. Moreover, no one could say for sure what the future held. She didn't understand why Bu Yan would accuse someone of crimes that hadn't happened yet. The two argued, and the spring rain before them seemed a bit tragic. In the end, Lu Yuan said that if Bu Yan deliberately wanted to kill Li Yong, they would immediately break up. That night, Lu Yuan angrily hit Bu Yan's mask. She thought this guy was so annoying for making her wait so long. But thinking back, he was a reasonable person. There must be a misunderstanding in this matter. But this night was a sleepless one for Bu Yan. He couldn't tell Lu Yuan that he had already lived through it all with her. He also didn't know what he should do next. If he killed Li Yong, they might not have a chance. But if he didn't kill him, how could he save the future Lu Yuan? He didn't want the current Lu Yuan to be heartbroken, nor did he want her to suffer in the future. Just then, Bu Yan suddenly thought of a good solution. He just needed to stop Lu Yuan from entering the palace. As long as he could take her away from Jiangdu City, Everything that would happen after that would be avoided. The next day, Bu Yan tried every way possible to apologize to Lu Yuan. First, he drew emoticons on eggs. Then he projected words on the window with candlelight. Every sentence expressed Bu Yan's love for Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan's anger subsided, and she asked Bu Yan if he was leaving again. The words on the window remained unanswered. Lu Yuan hurried to open the door. She was afraid that the man outside the window would leave. Bu Yan embraced Lu Yuan tightly, repeatedly apologizing. He said that he wouldn't leave. He wanted to take her back to her hometown of Hunan Ming for spring outings. Moreover, he would spend the Shangdi festival with her every year after that. This made Lu Yuan very happy, and she agreed to leave Jiangdu City. Next, Bu Yan took Lu Yuan and Yihua back to Hunan Meng. The three of them had a wonderful time. They fished together, cooked together, and cleaned together. Then Bu Yan took Lu Yuan to a willow tree on the shore of Hunan Meng Lake, wanting to hang wish tags there. He still remembered the old woman at Hunan Meng scenic area, thousands of years later. She said that this was a tradition passed down during the time of the Nine Kingdoms. But strangely, Lu Yuan didn't know this custom either. So Bu Yan taught Lu Yuan and Yihua to hang wish tags. They wrote down their wishes on a plaque and hung it on the tree. The higher and longer it was hung, the more likely the wish would come true. The seeds of the past are the fruits of the future. At this time, Bu Yan didn't know that his actions today would make hanging wish tags a custom of the Nine Kingdoms in the future. Yihua wanted Lu Shi to quickly become her general. Bu Yan wanted to change Lu Yuan's fate so they could stay together like this forever. It's just that no one knew what Lu Yuan's wish was. That night, Bu Yan secretly took Lu Yuan's wish tag down from the tree. If he knew her wish, he could address the problem directly. But as soon as he saw it, his expression changed. Then, he hurried back home and found a carrier pigeon with a letter. It said that the emperor would arrive at Jinghualu 2 days earlier than planned. Bu Yan thought perhaps the emperor's mind was still normal. And after this meeting with the emperor, Lu Yuan would probably enter the palace. The next day, there was a tinge of sadness in Bu Yan's flute music. Lu Yuan noticed the hidden messages in the tune and knew that he was troubled. It turned out that it was Bu Yan, who had taught Lu Yuan the sound transmission technique many years ago. She asked him if he was troubled. But he asked her back, "What kind of life do you want to live?" Lu Yuan's answer was simple. She didn't want wealth or power. She just wanted to be with her family. For Lu Yuan, Lu Shi, Yihua, and Bu Yan were all her family. Bu Yan said that he hoped he could stay with Lu Yuan in Hunan Meng, and they would live happily ever after. However, Lu Yuan remained silent after hearing this. She still had important things to finish in Jiangdu City. Bu Yan said directly that if he could help Lu Yuan persuade Emperor Yuan Qi to stop the expedition against Bei Li, would she then agree to leave Jinghualu and return to Hunan Meng with him to build a home? Lu Yuan didn't immediately agree, but she gave Bu Yan a mischievous smile. The next day, the three of them got into a carriage and returned to Jiangdu City. Meanwhile, a guest arrived at Jinghualu. It was the 20-year-old Emperor Yuan Qi. The emperor arrived as scheduled, but he didn't expect to see Lu Yuan and a strange man inside Jinghualu. Lu Yuan explained that the music today needed to be performed with a pipa and a flute together. Although the emperor was unhappy in his heart, he had to act like a wise ruler and reluctantly agreed. But Lu Yuan and Bu Yan had a different agenda. They used the song to express their unspoken words. When he was still the crown prince, the emperor had loved the people, helped the refugees, and encouraged women to read. Everyone admired him. Then, Huofeng City fell, and the previous emperor was unwilling to give up, so he fought wars every year. As a result, the nation's strength dwindled day by day, and the people were restless. The emperor's memories from those days unconsciously resurfaced, causing him to shed tears. Bu Yan and Lu Yuan used military strategies to persuade the emperor that war was truly the last resort. Aside from war, what a true emperor must do is to use power and diplomacy to stabilize the country. But the emperor was angry. Peace only comes after war. The Nine Kingdoms are constantly fighting. It's a world of survival of the fittest, and only strong countries can survive in times of chaos. Bu Yan asked the emperor back, "If a soldier in iron armor with sharp weapons fought against 50 old, weak and sick people. Who would win? The emperor felt that the numbers were too lopsided. Of course, the 50 people would win. Bu Yan then brought out a basket of eggs and a rock. He smashed each egg against the rock. However, no matter how many eggs there were, they could not break the rock. This was the principle of using eggs to hit a rock. Bu Yan's actions were meant to wake up the emperor and make him sympathize with the people. Did the emperor want to use the lives of his people to hit a rock with an egg? Seeing the emperor waver, Bu Yan continued. Instead of mobilizing the entire population and relying on numbers to defeat Bai Li, why not consider creating an elite army that wins every battle? Use machinery to achieve victory. The emperor didn't understand what machinery was, so Bu Yan brought out another egg. The difference was that this egg was covered in an iron shell. Bu Yan smashed this special egg against the rock, and the rock instantly shattered into pieces. The emperor needs to improve the size of the sword, making it impossible for the enemy to get close. Sharpen the sword so it can cut even hair. This is improving mechanical technology. Advanced mechanical technology can defeat 100 enemies with one. In addition, strength can be divided into soft and hard. This egg is a hard-boiled egg. It's the same with unifying the world. Relying on force alone to conquer land cannot truly subdue other nations. The most important thing is to spread our language and culture. The emperor was overjoyed to hear this. Not only did he agree to cancel the expedition against Bai Li, but he also wanted to appoint Bu Yan as the new prime minister. Unknowingly, Li Yong was hiding on the second floor, eavesdropping on everything. He was filled with frustration and disbelief that the emperor would let an unknown nobody replace him. What was the point of all his efforts for the country and the people over the years? After solving the major problem on his mind, the emperor happily gave the Phoenix badge to Lu Yuan, wanting her to be his empress. Bu Yan was getting anxious when Lu Shi returned from the southwestern border. When he learned that the emperor wanted his sister to be empress, Lu Shi was very worried. Currently, he was a general with military power. If his sister became empress, it would surely cause criticism from the court officials. To protect his sister's reputation, Lu Shi didn't hesitate to threaten the emperor by saying he would leave the army and return to his hometown. Furthermore, Lu Yuan said she had someone in her heart. The emperor was very helpless, but he still gave the Phoenix badge to Lu Yuan as a symbol of her status as empress. If she ever changed her mind, she could come to the palace to see him. Before leaving, the emperor entrusted Lu Shi with the task of building a powerful army. Swift as a leopard, fierce as a tiger, able to defeat 100 with one. Once the elite army was trained, that would be the day Nansheng recaptured Huofeng City. It turned out that the Tiger Banner army was established because of Bu Yan's suggestion. Bu Yan breathed a sigh of relief. This storm had finally calmed down for now. He could finally build a home with Lu Yuan in Hunan and live a carefree life. But this cruel fate wouldn't spare anyone. Bu Yan discovered that the emperor's driver was actually Qi Long. Realizing that the emperor was in danger, he and Lu Yuan quickly used the Phoenix badge to rush to the palace. Unfortunately, it was too late. The emperor was holding his head in pain. Lu Yuan smelled the scent of mangu grass from Bai Li on the emperor. It was harmless for normal people, but for the emperor, who had suffered from headaches for years, it was a deadly poison. Bu Yan used his modern medical knowledge to provide first aid and told Lu Yuan to quickly call for the court physician. However, when they reached the door, they found that Li Yong and Qi Long were headed in their direction. It turned out that Li Yong had overheard the emperor and Bu Yan's conversation and was disheartened. He decided to cooperate with Bai Li. Qi Long suggested to Li Yong that they should kill the emperor and then support Bai Yan as a puppet. Then, Li Yong could kidnap the emperor and command the vassal. Li Yong, who was unwilling to be dismissed and driven by ambition, agreed. From then on, Li Yong, once a virtuous general, completely became a traitor. Afterwards, he and Qi Long went to the Grand Hall. Lu Yuan and Bu Yan quickly hid and spied on them. Seeing the emperor lying on the ground, Li Yong faked an imperial decree and intended to announce to the court officials that Bai Yan would inherit Nansheng. Unexpectedly, the emperor suddenly regained consciousness. Li Yong, feeling anxious, hurriedly knelt down and confessed his crime. But he discovered that the emperor had lost his mind. His words and actions were like a child's. This was good news for him. Compared to Bayan, a mentally incapacitated emperor was clearly more suitable as a puppet. Lai Yong immediately told the emperor that the previous emperor had entrusted him with the government. Moreover, the emperor had to obey him from then on. Everything was seen by Lu Yuan and Bu Yan. After leaving the palace, Lu Yuan was gloomy and unhappy. The person she trusted the most had betrayed the country. Just then, a man on horseback rushed towards them. Bu Yan quickly shielded Lu Yuan in his arms. The jade pendant she wore around her neck accidentally fell to the ground. Bu Yan noticed it was the double-fish jade pendant. He didn't understand how Lu Yuan had obtained it. Hearing this, Lu Yuan looked heartbroken. That night, she recalled Bu Yan's words in her dreams. Fish swimming in water, both the tail and the head. Old stories fade like dreams. Lu Yuan hadn't understood these words before, but now she did. They were destined to be strangers. At that time, Li Yong came to find Lu Yuan. He informed her that the emperor had been harmed by Bei Li. Fortunately, he had discovered it in time and saved the emperor's life. However, he had lost his mind. He also said that this incident should never be revealed to the court officials. Lu Yuan needed to enter the palace as the emperor's personal bodyguard, responsible for taking care of his daily life. He would continue to serve as a general, handling government affairs and maintaining stability in Nanxing. Lu Yuan didn't expose his plot and agreed to do as he said. Now, she could only pretend to obey, gradually build up her own power to protect the emperor's life. One day, she would expose Li Yong's deeds. That night, Lu Yuan prepared to enter the palace, but Bu Yan rushed to dissuade her. He didn't want her to enter the palace and lose her life. Hearing this, Lu Yuan said that she was already dead. To him, she was just a few lines in the history books. Moreover, Lu Yuan knew that in this reverse time loop, even if they loved each other, they could only miss each other. Bu Yan wanted to tell Lu Yuan everything that would happen in the future, but she chose to refuse. If fate had been decided, she would rather not know. At least she would still have hope. On that lonely night, Lu Yuan said goodbye and turned to leave, leaving Bu Yan standing silently in place. Lu Yuan's face was strong, but after getting on the carriage, she couldn't help but burst into tears. All their memories together came back vividly. In the end, they could only miss each other. As the carriage traveled farther and farther away, Lu Yuan discovered that the driver was actually Bu Yan. Like Bu Yan, Yihua also hoped that her lady would leave the palace and live a carefree life. Bu Yan asked Lu Yuan why she had to accept the arrangement of fate. Why couldn't she be selfish and live for herself? It turned out that Lu Yuan hadn't written anything on her wish tag that day. She had no wishes because she knew that no matter how many wishes she made, they wouldn't come true. Because fate had already been decided. Lu Yuan cried and said that she would answer his question that day. She wanted very much to build a home with him and hide away in Hunan. But if she indulged her personal desires, then no one would be able to stop Li Yong, to reveal the truth. This was her mission, her destiny. She was still a person living in this era. She had to do what she had to do now. Bu Yan stopped the carriage. He suddenly realized that ever since meeting Lu Yuan, he had only thought about how to change her destiny, and hadn't truly given her warmth and companionship. If becoming the emperor's bodyguard was her destiny, then Bu Yan decided to enter the palace with Lu Yuan. No matter how difficult it was, he would face it with her. This finally brought a smile to Lu Yuan's face. When we overthrow Li Yong and reveal the truth, we will build a home together in Hunan and live the life we want. However, fate loves to play around. Bu Yan suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. It turned out that in the modern world, he had fallen into a coma and was being treated in the emergency room. It seemed it was time for him to return. Bu Yan struggled to touch the carriage curtain. He couldn't understand why fate was so cruel. Seeing the carriage stop, Lu Yuan lifted the curtain and discovered that Bu Yan had disappeared. In the heavy rain of the night, Lu Yuan cried and called out Bu Yan's name. He had agreed to enter the palace with her. How could he just leave like that? But the only answer was the relentless rain. That night, without Bu Yan by her side, Lu Yuan finally entered the palace and became the Lu commander recorded in history. She put away the jade pendant. If there was a next time, she wouldn't want to see him again. In the modern world, Bu Yan woke up after receiving first aid. He discovered that the jade pendant was missing. He rushed out of the ambulance to look for it. Lu Yuan was waiting for him. He would definitely return to her. In the muddy puddle, Bu Yan finally found the lost jade pendant. But at that moment, he fainted from exhaustion. A drop of blood from his finger fell onto the jade pendant. The jade pendant was finally restored to its entirety. Bu Yan was transported back to Nansheng once more. After regaining consciousness, he found himself by the riverbank. Seeing the jade pendant beside him, he reached for it, but a woman grabbed it first. Bu Yan looked up and saw the 18-year-old Lu Yuan. Bu Yan immediately burst into tears. He finally saw the woman he loved again. But at that time, Lu Yuan didn't know who he was. She knew nothing about their future together. Because this was their first meeting, Lu Yuan returned the jade pendant to Bu Yan. Looking at the complete jade pendant, Bu Yan knew that this was probably his last trip to Nansheng, and his last time seeing Lu Yuan. Later, Lu Yuan returned home. At this time, she was just an ordinary girl living in Hunanmon with her family. She picked mushrooms every day, living a simple and happy life. Today was the third day of the third month, and her grandfather was preparing delicious egg and soup. Bu Yan looked at the scene before him, feeling that she was happier without him. Does he really need to appear in her life? Hearing that her brother had secretly gone to practice swordsmanship in the bamboo forest, Lu Yuan grabbed 2 buns and ran into the woods. At this time, Lu Shi was still young, just a stable hand for Mujian's family. The brother's father had died on the battlefield years ago. Their grandfather didn't want them to repeat the same mistake, so he hoped they would live a normal life. However, Lu Shi was determined to join the army to protect the country, so he was often scolded by his grandfather. But Lu Shi refused to listen and insisted on enlisting, making his grandfather faint from anger. At this moment, young Master Mujian came over and wanted to take Lu Shi to play. Lu Shi didn't want to go, so Mujian was furious. Lu Shi was his stable hand. He was his servant. How could a servant disobey his master? Moreover, he had the family's slave registration documents in his hand. Lu Yuan, hearing this, quickly rushed out to speak for her brother. She gave Mujian a basket of freshly picked mushrooms as an apology. Unexpectedly, young Master Mujian took the opportunity to touch her hand. This scene made Bu Yan resolute. If he couldn't change Lu Yuan's fate, he would help her gain the strength to break free from her shackles. Later, Lu Yuan was cooking when she suddenly heard the sound of a flute. This tune, Yearning Tune, was the one she had composed. Lu Yuan didn't understand how the stranger in front of her knew her tune. Bu Yan simply said, "Without yearning, how can there be a yearning tune?" This made her even more confused. At this time, Bu Yan hoped to make a deal with her. As long as Lu Yuan did 3 things with him, he would answer 3 questions for her. Unexpectedly, Lu Yuan felt it was a bad deal. Not only did she haggle, but she also demanded a higher price. In the end, she settled on doing 1 thing in exchange for 3 answers, plus 5 taels of silver. Bu Yan didn't have any silver, so Lu Yuan wanted that jade pendant. Bu Yan agreed, but he wouldn't hand it over until after they were done. Lu Yuan's first question was, "Who are you exactly?" Bu Yan deliberately said his name, but he didn't mention anything about his background. Lu Yuan's second question was, "When and where did you hear this yearning tune?" Bu Yan answered, "It wouldn't be called eavesdropping." Then he asked Lu Yuan back, "What year is it now?" Knowing that it was the 33rd year of Jingping, Bu Yan said that he had heard it 18 years ago. Lu Yuan immediately felt that he wasn't trustworthy. After all, she was still in her mother's womb 18 years ago. Bu Yan said that he didn't say 18 years ago. Lu Yuan felt even more ridiculous. Could it be 18 years later? Lu Yuan's final question was, "What are you trying to do?" Bu Yan then said, "I want to teach you some things, so that you won't be bullied anymore." Suddenly, the wind blew a leaf onto Lu Yuan's hair. Bu Yan wanted to brush it off, but she dodged. Just like 18 years later, the first time he met Lu Yuan, she had dodged him like that. Next, Bu Yan began to impart his knowledge to Lu Yuan. The theme of the first lesson was to look at the essence through appearances. He used young Master Mujian as an example. He took the basket of mushrooms from Lu Yuan's hand. His true nature was to bully good people and do bad things. Taking this opportunity, Bu Yan explained the rule of law to Lu Yuan. He wanted to teach her to use the rule of law to fight evil. Lu Yuan was intelligent and eager to learn. After that, she would come to class on time every day. She also wanted to earn money to redeem her brother's freedom and buy herself a pipa. Lu Yuan's words made Bu Yan feel a bit sad. He asked, "If you knew that a person would die in 10 days, would you tell them?" Lu Yuan shook her head. In her view, if she told them, the person would be very miserable for the remaining 9 days. Bu Yan was startled. Many years ago and many years later, Lu Yuan was still the same Lu Yuan. The second lesson Bu Yan taught Lu Yuan was about the affairs of the world, especially the relationship between Nansheng and Bei Li. Lu Yuan didn't want to think about it. She felt that having Bu Yan was enough. Bu Yan felt even more distressed. He also wanted to be by her side all the time, but he couldn't. Under Bu Yan's scolding, Lu Yuan began to think independently. She was intelligent and had a good teacher, so she understood quickly. Soon, she understood the significance of Luli Gorge, Wofeng City, and Nansheng. Bu Yan didn't know at this time that what he taught her today would shape the Lu commander and the Empress Lu of the future. Afterward, Bu Yan continued to teach Lu Yuan. This time, he taught her about the hidden messages in the melody, corresponding to the positions in the classic of poetry, which could be used to secretly transmit information. After Lu Yuan memorized the classic of poetry, Bu Yan caught fish and grilled them for her. That night, Bu Yan coughed, and Lu Yuan made pear soup for him. They were becoming closer and closer. Bu Yan even wanted Lu Yuan to learn martial arts for self-defense. However, he found out that she had already secretly learned from her grandfather long ago. Bu Yan was about to teach Lu Yuan her final lesson, when suddenly a neighbor rushed over to report that something had happened to Lu Shi. It turned out that Lu Shi had been looking after the horses at Mu Jian's place. He happened to see young Master Mu Jian bullying a young lady. That young lady was the 16-year-old Yi Hua. Yi Hua's father transported horses for Mu Jian, but a large number of them died before they reached the battlefield. As a result, Yi Hua's father was arrested, and Yi Hua was taken by young Master Mu Jian to be his concubine to pay off the debt. Lu Shi couldn't bear to watch and ran over with a wooden stick to beat young Master Mu Jian and rescue Yi Hua. This was also the beginning of their relationship. Due to his anger, young Master Mu Jian had people capture Lu Shi and punish him with a beating. His grandfather ran to protect his grandson and asked him to apologize, but Lu Shi refused to bow his head. Young Master Mu Jian then said he wanted to cut off Lu Shi's leg. At that moment, a military officer suddenly ran over to find Lu Shi. It turned out that Lu Shi had secretly enlisted in the army without telling his grandfather. Because of his excellent horse riding and archery skills, he had been placed in the reserve army. The officer had come to redeem him because he was ordered by the regional commander. For Lu Shi, this was not only a chance to change his fate, but he also vowed to become a general to change this terrible world. Hearing this, young Master Mu Jian mocked Lu Shi. He didn't believe that Lu Shi could become a general. He even snatched the military order from the officer's hand, claiming to be Lu Shi's master and having the right to decide his fate. Lu Shi was shocked when his grandfather took the military order from young Master Mu Jian and held it protectively in his arms. When Mu Jian drew his sword and was about to attack the two of them, Lu Yuan and Bu Yan arrived in time. Bu Yan pulled young Master Mu Jian aside. He persuaded Lu Shi that even though he was just in the reserve army, with the impending war, the army would definitely conduct a strict investigation. If there was a shortage of soldiers, he would be implicated. Young Master Mu Jian felt it was reasonable, and he dropped the matter of Lu Shi. However, he wanted to sell Yi Hua to a brothel. At this time, Lu Yuan stepped forward. She said that Yi Hua had a favor owed to her family, so she wanted to marry Yi Hua to young Master Mu Jian. However, the condition was that she wouldn't be a concubine, but a proper marriage with a ceremony. Young Master Mu Jian was overjoyed. He had been secretly lusting after Lu Yuan for a long time. Bu Yan felt worried, but then he saw Lu Yuan subtly signal that it was all right. Thus, Lu Yuan followed young Master Mu Jian back to his manor. Bu Yan stopped Lu Shi, wanting to follow and stop them. He trusted Lu Yuan and knew she would find a way. A few days later, Bu Yan found out about the situation and immediately took out the classic of poetry to decipher it. Lu Yuan had sent a message that she could escape. On this side, Lu Yuan was clever. She found an excuse to leave the manor, and then, on the way, she tricked her maid into leaving and took the opportunity to run to the regional commander's manor. She accused Mu Jian of treason and reported the truth about the horses' deaths. The regional commander was none other than Li Yong, before he became prime minister. The reason she had gone to Mu Jian's manor was to find out the truth about the horse case and completely eliminate Mu Jian and his son. According to her investigation, the horses hadn't died on the transport route, but they had been sold at a high price to Bei Li by Mu Jian and his son. To prove this, she also brought letters they had exchanged that she secretly found in the manor. Luckily, Li Yong was an upright man that year. On his orders, Mu Jian and his son were immediately convicted. Afterwards, Lu Shi could smoothly join the army. Lu Yuan, having eliminated the tyrant, also escaped safely. During these days, Lu Yuan had fallen for Bu Yan. She wanted to confess her feelings to him after their last lesson, but Bu Yan seemed sad. For the current Lu Yuan, their story was just beginning, but for Bu Yan, the story was already over. His last lesson was about letting go. Lu Yuan was confused, but Bu Yan didn't explain. He only said he had to return to his hometown. The two of them might not see each other for a long time. He simply said goodbye and decisively turned to leave. After Bu Yan left, Lu Yuan often hugged her pear soup and sat under the tree, but she still couldn't wait for her beloved. One day, Lu Yuan was walking through the bamboo forest when she suddenly saw Bu Yan's shadow reflected in the sunlight. So she pretended to slip and fall, luring him to appear. Lu Yuan didn't understand why he couldn't bear to leave, but wouldn't stay. Bu Yan simply said, "It's pointless to force something that has no results." As he was about to leave again, he fainted from coughing. Lu Yuan took him home to take care of him. While he was unconscious, she heard his words in his dreams, but she didn't understand what they meant. After several days of unconsciousness, Bu Yan finally woke up. But as soon as he got out of bed, he wanted to leave. Just as Lu Yuan had said, if fate couldn't be changed, why bother starting this cause and effect? Lu Yuan chased after Bu Yan to stop him. She asked him, "If you knew you would have to leave the person you love in 10 days, would you choose to leave on the first day, or spend the remaining 9 days happily with them?" Lu Yuan's question broke Bu Yan's heart. He had left in a hurry because he didn't want to face the pain of saying goodbye. Although Lu Yuan didn't know about the future, for her 18-year-old self, it was better to endure the pain of loss than to live a life of numbness and indifference. Bu Yan finally turned back. He strode towards the woman in front of him and embraced her tightly. It was true, it was better to cherish the happiness of the present than to worry about an upcoming loss. A few days later, Bu Yan bought Lu Yuan the pipa she had been longing for. This made Lu Yuan very happy. On the shore of Hunan Mong Lake, Lu Yuan played the pipa while Bu Yan played the flute. Life was good if it could continue like this. Bu Yan hoped with all his heart that he could forget all his memories of the future. Only then could he enjoy the present. Every day, he would say goodbye and goodnight to Lu Yuan, because he never knew when he would suddenly leave. On the other side, there was another couple in love, Lu Shi and Yi Hua. Lu Shi stood out in the reserve unit, but everyone teased him, saying he looked like a weak girl. Lu Shi was worried that if he went to war, the enemy would see his face and wouldn't be afraid. Yi Hua had an idea. She told Lu Shi that he only needed to show his eyes, and they wouldn't recognize him. This is why the General Lu Shi tiger mask appeared later. If happiness could stay at this moment, it would be wonderful. Unfortunately, time is always cruel. A few days later, Lu Shi wrote a letter from the army, saying that Bei Li's invasion of Huofeng City was about to fall. At that time, Lu Yuan had just finished making Bu Yan a new set of clothes. However, due to the urgency of the situation, he didn't even have time to put on the new clothes. Lu Yuan quickly told Yi Hua to take the valuables from the house, preparing for any contingencies. But everyone was short of money during wartime, and the items in the house couldn't be exchanged for money. Just then, Lu Yuan noticed a jade pendant on a stall. The shopkeeper said that a few days ago, a young man exchanged this jade pendant for a pipa. After hearing this, Lu Yuan immediately exchanged all her jewelry for the pendant. She would rather spend all her money than let Bu Yan abandon the jade pendant that held meaning for him. On the way back, a soldier stopped Lu Yuan and said that the regional commander wanted to see her. When Lu Yuan arrived at the regional commander's manor, she found 2 other women there besides herself, both renowned musicians in the area. La Yang asked the 3 of them if they knew why he had summoned them. The other 2 women said it was for them to play music to relieve his sorrow. But Lu Yuan had a different opinion. She had heard that every time Bei Li captured a city, they would find musicians to play music and boost the morale of their soldiers. So, she believed that Li Yang was looking for someone who could risk their life and infiltrate Bei Li's ranks to gather intelligence. Lu Yuan's intelligence impressed Li Yang again. He hoped that she would take on this responsibility. After some hesitation, Lu Yuan agreed. She knew the trip was extremely dangerous, but as a citizen of Nansheng, she couldn't stand by. The situation was urgent, so Lu Yuan needed to immediately go to the enemy camp, but she hoped that Li Yang would give her time to say goodbye to her loved ones. After returning home, Lu Yuan saw her brother. This time, Lu Shi had also returned to say goodbye. He was about to go to the front lines to fight. Seeing that his grandchildren had their own aspirations, their grandfather no longer stopped them. At this time, Lu Shi couldn't have known that this battle would make him a famous general. Lu Yuan also wouldn't have known that after this trip, she would no longer be a simple girl living in Hunan. After saying goodbye to her brother and grandfather, the last person Lu Yuan wanted to say goodbye to was Bu Yan. She promised she would come back soon and returned the jade pendant to him. Bu Yan smiled gently and gave the pendant back to her. In the moment that their hands touched, Bu Yan's memories of the past and the future all flooded back. He understood that their time loop was like this complete double-fish jade pendant. A complete and closed time loop had formed. The cycle of cause and effect was about to end. Lu Yuan unexpectedly kissed Bu Yan's cheek. It was a light and lingering kiss. Before leaving, Lu Yuan imitated Bu Yan and said goodbye, telling him to wait for her return. At that moment, Bu Yan couldn't hold back his tears. Lu Yuan's back gradually faded into the distance on the path. Bu Yan was gloomy. Then, he shouted a farewell to her receding figure. The water in Hunan still flowed forward, and Bu Yan had vanished, of course. Smoke from the firewood drifted in front of the wooden house. The tableware lay silently on the table. Time quietly turned back into sorrow. Hunan seemed to still echo with the laughter of 1,000 years ago. But now, as Bu Yan turned his head, he realized that there was only the residue of the present before him. 1,000 years later, Bu Yan was still full of confusion. The 5 pieces of jade traveled to Nansheng 5 times, and as a result, the 5 cracks on the jade pendant had completely closed. And he was the one who had given the jade pendant to Lu Yuan. This cycle of cause and effect was complete. Was this the whole meaning of this journey? The sun set over the Bei Li invasion, the night of the Yuan Kai rebellion. Perhaps that was the beginning and the end of this time loop. And it was also the beginning and the end of Bu Yan and Lu Yuan. Just as Bu Yan thought this, the old woman who sold the jade pendant suddenly appeared. She said that the jade pendant was passed down from her ancestors and was to be given to a man named Bu Yan. But the old woman said that her ancestors weren't Lu Yuan. Moreover, Lu Yuan didn't die in the Yuan Kai rebellion. Through the old woman's story, the unsolved mysteries of this time travel journey were gradually revealed. In the 15th year of Yuan Kai, on the night of the rebellion, Lu Yuan directly confronted Li Yong. She knocked the treasure off Zhao Qilong, and then, to protect Bu Yan, was shot by Li Yong. Seeing this opportunity, the Tiger Banner army immediately charged forward. Tong Sheng took advantage of the chaos and pretended to fall, swapping the real treasure. It was all part of Lu Yuan's plan, including getting shot. It was a step in her plan. The goal was to retrieve the real treasure. Lu Yuan's injuries weren't life-threatening. She ordered her troops to assemble, preparing to meet the enemy. The Bei Li army used the fake treasure to launch their invasion, but as a result, they suffered heavy losses. After discovering the treasure was fake, the captain, in a fit of rage, took out his anger on Li Yong. Li Yong smiled foolishly. He realized that he had fallen for Lu Yuan's plan. In the last moments, Li Yong found his initial heart again. He said, "I was born in Nansheng, and I will die as a ghost of Nansheng. I am the greatest hero of Nansheng." This was the origin of the name Li Yong, the virtuous general. In the end, Li Yong was killed by the Bei Li captain. At this moment, On the shore of Hunan, the old woman told Bu Yan to look again at the ending of Nansheng Dai Shi. After looking at it, Bu Yan discovered that the ending of the Yuan Kai rebellion had been restored. It wasn't Li Yong who shot Lu Yuan, but Lu Yuan who shot Li Yong. The old woman explained that history never changes. What changed was Bu Yan's thoughts. Lu Yuan's fate had never changed from the beginning. The old woman told Bu Yan that she was a descendant of Tong Sheng. In history, Lu Yuan didn't die in the Yuan Kai rebellion, but in her later years, she was eliminated by Emperor Sheng Wu, Tong Sheng, in the name of the tyrannical Empress. Bu Yan didn't understand how Tong Sheng could know what Lu Yuan was like and still do that. But the old woman asked him to find the answer for himself. After the old woman left, Bu Yan read the news. An ancient tomb was found near Hunan. Archaeologists speculated that the tomb was from the time of the Nine Kingdoms. Bu Yan knew it was Lu Yuan's tomb. He studied it in depth for the following days, finally discovering the truth about history. In history, Tong Sheng buried Lu Yuan in Hunan, according to her wishes. He also buried an imperial edict with her, clearing her name. Time went back to the 20th year of Yuan Kai. Every Shang Dai festival, Lu Yuan would return to the shore of Hunan, hoping that the man she loved would return. 5 years after the Yuan Kai rebellion, Lu Yuan was 41 years old. That year, she hung a wish tag. The wish she wrote was to meet Bu Yan again. Even though she knew the outcome, she still hoped. Lu Yuan believed that sincere wishes would come true, that perhaps on the other side of time, the man she was waiting for was also waiting for her. Just as Lu Yuan wished, they finally met again. However, according to Bu Yan's timeline, this was their first encounter, at the moment when Lu Yuan's life was ending. This first encounter was also their last. Lu Yuan saw Bu Yan in the crowd. Her wish was finally fulfilled, so she smiled through her tears. Regarding the people's misunderstanding about the Empress, Emperor Shengwu, Tong Sheng, wanted to clear Lu Yuan's name. However, Lu Yuan chose to refuse. For all these years, Nansheng had been weakened, and the people needed an explanation for that. Only by eliminating the tyrannical Empress would the people have hope for a brighter future. Tong Sheng could use this as a foundation to usher in a period of peace and prosperity. From then on, Lu Yuan left behind a bad reputation in history as the tyrannical Empress. 1,000 years later, Bu Yan was determined to prove Lu Yuan right. He would reconstruct the most authentic account of the Nine Kingdoms period and clear her name in his book. Bu Yan's efforts over many years were finally rewarded. An exhibition of cultural relics from the Nine Kingdoms period was held. As time passed, the man who had helped the Empress guide the country had grown old. Bu Yan stared intently at the pipa in front of him. This was the one he had exchanged for with Lu Yuan using the jade pendant. At this moment, everyone disappeared, the light faded, and the Lu Yuan from 1,000 years ago appeared beside the pipa. She gently spoke 3 words. "I miss you." Then, Bu Yan played the yearning tune on the pipa. When he opened his eyes, he was in a different place. It was Nansheng, Hunan, 1,000 years ago. Not far away, there was a little girl watering a sapling. Bu Yan knew this was young Lu Yuan. Young Lu Yuan didn't recognize the man in front of her and called him uncle. She plucked a silver hair from his head and said, "When this sapling grows up, I'll be all grown up too." And that tree was the sacred tree where they would hang their wish tags many years later. As dusk approached, Bu Yan took Lu Yuan home. Suddenly, a bell rang in the distance. Bu Yan knew that this time travel journey was over. He couldn't go home with Lu Yuan anymore. He told Lu Yuan to love the one she loved and do what she wanted to do. He also told her that Yan originally wasn't a kite, but a hawk. She didn't need to be held by a string, and she could fly freely. Bu Yan also didn't want to be the string that tied Lu Yuan down. Before parting ways, they pinky promised to meet again. Lu Yuan smiled and turned to walk into the vibrant rainbow. Bu Yan watched her receding figure and shed tears. Lu Yuan's life was heading towards the future, but his life was dying day by day. He didn't know when he would see her again. Under the rainbow after the rain, Lu Yuan turned her head and called out, "Uncle," but Bu Yan's figure was no longer on the lakeshore. Lu Yuan felt a little confused, and then smiled lightly. The cycle of cause and effect of fate in this world had been predetermined. This is the end of this story. If you liked it, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel so I can be motivated to create more great stories. Thank you.